You know, when we think about getting better with money, our minds immediately jump to things like spreadsheets, complex formulas, all that data. But what if I told you the most important factor isn't what you know, but how you act? Today, we're going to dive into why your relationship with money has less to do with math and everything to do with psychology. So, to kick things off, let me ask you a question. Who do you think is better with money? A top executive from a huge financial firm, Harvard MBA and all? Or, say, a local janitor who spent his days sweeping floors?
All right, so on one side, you've got Richard Fuscone. I mean, this guy is the textbook definition of success, right? Harvard education, high-powered job at Merrill Lynch, even retired in his 40s. And then on the other side, you've got Ronald Reed. He was a gas station attendant, a janitor. I mean, two totally different worlds.
But their financial stories, well, they took a turn that pretty much nobody could have predicted. And this is where things get really interesting.
So Richard Fuscone, the guy with the fancy degree and all the financial expertise, you'd think he'd be set for life. But during the 2008 financial crisis, he took on a ton of debt to expand his already lavish home. And just like that, he lost everything, declared bankruptcy.
Okay, so what about Ronald Reed, the janitor? Well, when he passed away back in 2014, people were absolutely floored when they found out his net worth. It wasn't just a few $1,000s he'd stashed away. It was $8 million.
And get this, there was no lottery win, no big inheritance. He just saved what little he could, put it into stable blue-chip stocks, and then he waited. For decades, he just let that small pile of savings compound into an absolute fortune.
So how on earth is this possible? How does a man with zero financial training run circles around an executive from the highest levels of the financial world? Well, the answer isn't about intelligence. It's about psychology.
In that story, the tale of Ronald Reed and Richard Fuscone, it perfectly captures the core idea we're talking about today. When it comes to money, your behavior is your greatest asset. It's your superpower.
See, the key thing to wrap your head around is that financial success isn't a hard science. It's a soft skill. It's less like physics with all its rigid laws, and it's a lot more like, well, like history, a field that's totally guided by people's behaviors, their emotions, and the stories they tell themselves.
Author Morgan Housel just nails it with this quote. Ronald Reed, the janitor, he got this. Richard Fuscone, for all his brains, did not. See, Reed's success came from things like patience and humility. Fuscone's failure, that came from greed and overconfidence.
And that brings us to this really common mental trap that honestly we all fall into. It kind of shows how we think about wealth all wrong. It's called the man in the car paradox. Just imagine this. A shiny Ferrari pulls up next to you at a stoplight. You look over, you admire the car, it's beautiful. But do you really think, wow, that person driving that car is just so cool? Probably not. Instead, what you're probably thinking is, wow, if I had that car, people would think I'm cool. See what happens. We use someone else's wealth as a benchmark for what we want, and we totally ignore the person who actually has it. The paradox is that we chase wealth to get admiration from others, but we rarely give admiration to others for their wealth.
And that leads us to a really important distinction. Being rich is about having a high income. It's visible. It's the fancy car, the big house. But being wealthy, that's what you don't see. It's the money that hasn't been spent yet. Real wealth is the car not bought, the upgrade not taken. It's those financial assets that are quietly growing, giving you freedom and options.
So if wealth is really about saving and patiently waiting, what does it actually take to build it? And more importantly, to keep it? Let's take a look at the hidden costs. Now here's a fascinating little twist. Getting wealthy often requires you to be optimistic, to take big risks, to really put yourself out there. But staying wealthy? That takes almost the exact opposite mindset. It requires humility, a healthy fear that you could lose what you've made, and really, a survivor's mentality.
To really understand the power of staying wealthy, we got to talk about Warren Buffett. He's probably the most famous investor of all time, right? But just look at this number for a second.
An absolutely incredible 99.9% of his entire net worth was accumulated after his 50th birthday. His skill is investing, no doubt. But his secret? It's time. He wasn't just good, he was good for a very long time. And that right there is the magic of uninterrupted compounding. But sticking around in the game for that long has a price. And it's not a price that you'll see on any tag. It's the emotional cost of dealing with market swings, the fear, the uncertainty, the regret, that constant fight to not panic and sell at the absolute worst moment.
So, the real key is how you frame this price in your mind. When the market tanks, do you see it as a fine, like a punishment for making a mistake, or do you see it as a fee, basically the cost of admission you have to pay for a shot at amazing long-term returns? Successful investors get it. It's a fee, and it's a fee worth paying.
All of this leads us to the final and probably the most important question. Why even go through all this trouble? What is the ultimate goal of building wealth anyway?
So what's the real prize at the end of all this? It's not about buying more stuff. The absolute highest dividend that money pays is the ability to control your own time, to do what you want, when you want, with who you want. That's it. So what does that actually look like in real life? It means waking up and being able to say, you know what? I can do whatever I want today. It's having the cushion to wait for a job you actually love, instead of grabbing the first one that comes along. It's being able to handle a medical emergency without the extra panic of financial ruin. And yeah, ultimately, it's retiring when you want to, not when you're forced to.
Which brings us right back to where we started. True financial success isn't about chasing the highest possible returns. It's about knowing when to stop moving the goalposts. It's deciding what enough actually means to you, not to the people you're trying to keep up with. So, the question I want to leave you with is, what does enough look like for you?